everyone, I'm Daleen Hassan. Welcome to the show. This week, we are on the factory floor to gain insight into how local and regional manufacturing sector is faring in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our location today, as you can see, is an aerospace components operation in the UAE's oasis city of Al Ain, which has shifted its focus to producing face masks to help global aid efforts.
What COVID-19 has done, it's simply accelerated that process so that we could obviously embrace technology and get the most out of the fourth industrial revolution.
Stay tuned, as a little bit later, we are on the ground in Tunisia, calculating the financial cost of COVID-19 on the country's plastics industry. But first, Rebecca McLaughlin-Easton takes a closer look at the major changes in the manufacturing space, from local perspective with companies like Mubadala to the global view, as we hear from sector giants. Here is the story.
Like almost every industry around the world, manufacturing has been badly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The key to its survival appears to be digitizing and modernizing, also said executives who gathered for the virtual Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit in September. Honeywell's chief executive said that economic stimulus was the correct approach to the pandemic, whilst Schneider Electric's head said that government funds should be directed towards SMEs who were less insulated and more vulnerable than large manufacturers. Meanwhile, Siemens CEO had this to say.
The question for us is very important. What is going to be temporary in nature in terms of the changes, and what is going to be structural in nature.
Spearheading discussions was Badr Al-Olama, head of the organizing committee of GMIS. And he highlighted the urgent need for global dialogue to shape the future of the industrial sector. He pointed to how, in a short space of time, consumer needs have changed, forcing manufacturers to adjust their products and services. He added that private sector companies needed to take the lead, whilst governments should focus on providing the right policies and frameworks to embrace the fourth industrial revolution. Central to the UAE government's strategy for the fourth industrial revolution is Mubadala Aerospace, of which Badr is head. One of the companies he oversees is Strata, a supplier of aircraft parts to global plane manufacturers like Airbus and Boeing. The worldwide aerospace sector has been badly affected by the COVID-19 crisis, with IATA estimating this year's global industry losses will total $84.3 billion. Strata has pivoted during the pandemic, and in partnership with Honeywell, it established the first production line for N95 masks in the region, with its facilities in Al Ain capable of producing 90,000 units per day. To get the details and hear more about the UAE's ambitions to become a manufacturing hub, Badr joined me from the United States.
Badr, thank you so much for joining me from New York on Inspire Middle East. If we look at manufacturing as a future-oriented industry, and with, of course, the influence of the fourth industrial revolution, what's the next frontier? What will ensure that manufacturing, locally and globally, remains not only prosperous, but also sustainable?
In light of what has happened with COVID, is going to develop, in my opinion, something in the form of hybrid models where technology and people have to coexist, have to work together. In my opinion, what COVID-19 has done, it's simply accelerated that process so that we could obviously embrace technology and get the most out of the fourth industrial revolution, as opposed to trying to fight it or trying to steer away from it in the context of it may cause more damage than good.
The continuation and future success of the industry at home and abroad, of course, depends much on strategic partnerships, alliances, collaborations, cross-country, cross-border. In light of COVID-19, how does that now play out?
I think what this world needs is better communication. We need to be able to better communicate what is it exactly that we are driving towards. And if we are able to do that in a very clear and concise way, I think you will see much more appetite, much more reception for partnerships. There is no other alternative except for cooperation, collaboration, and that is pretty much the only way forward.
In which sector or subsectors of UAE manufacturing do you foresee the greatest growth in the coming years? Could it be pharmaceuticals, food and beverage, minerals, plastics? What do you see?
Whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be on the aerospace side, whether it becomes even more so on the metallic or metal side of development in terms of steel or aluminum, the UAE is open for business. So when you look at the aerospace side, the way that we set about the investment in building aircraft parts for both Airbus and Boeing, none of that would have been possible had it not been a partnership approach with both Airbus and Boeing.
Well, let me pick up on the local aerospace industry. What have been the biggest lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic? What has been the impact?
How do you deal with a pandemic when you need to continue from an operational perspective, maintaining a drumbeat, an operational drumbeat? You need to constantly focus and make sure that those products are getting out. That's number one. The second thing is when you are in the manufacturing world, when you are in the aerospace world, which sort of dictates on you a very high level quality standard, there is no reason whatsoever that you cannot repurpose those skills. And that's an example, again, of what Strata did in terms of producing the N95 masks.
In terms of how badly COVID-19 has impacted the bottom line of businesses within the aerospace industry, how long-lasting do you expect the effects of the pandemic to be? And what is the level of preparedness for a potential second wave?
That's a very good question. I mean, some companies that were digital ready, they had a very high level of readiness with respect to embracing the digital technologies, are able to sustain this for at least, I believe, in the aerospace side for another 2 to 3 years. I think companies that haven't done that are going to be wiped out. Very simply put, you cannot continue to force people to go into a facility or to go into the office and feel compromised or vulnerable that they may catch something that could cause them to die, right? There are companies that were always lean, mean, and trying to keep things tight and running a tight ship in terms of keeping costs down and being able to sustain a sort of a bad situation that may come up abruptly. And those are the companies, and I'm proud to say that the companies that I oversee in my portfolio have demonstrated that we were always running a very tight ship.
And there we must leave it. Bader, thank you so much for your time from New York today.
I will. Thank you. Take care of yourself, Rebecca.
Tunisia's plans to accelerate growth in its plastics industry and attract more foreign investment were temporarily halted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Ines Methlouthi explains the significance of plastics manufacturing for Tunisia's future economic prosperity and how closer trade ties with Europe could be in the works. Take a look.
The International Monetary Fund back in April approved a $745,000 emergency loan to help Tunisia through the COVID-19 pandemic. The IMF also forecast its economy would shrink by 4.3% this year, making its deepest recession since the independence in 1956. Tunisia's plastics businesses have taken a hit, with economist Faisal Bradai from the Tunisian Union of Trade and Industry saying that production fell almost 20% from March to June. The sector had enjoyed steady growth in recent years, with free trade zones along Tunisia's coast being home to 282 plastics manufacturers, many of whom were exporting solely to Europe. The European Union is Tunisia's largest trading partner, with nearly 80% of the country's exports heading there in 2017, according to EU data. And it's been the export of car parts to German and French firms made using advanced technologies, which have helped the growth of Tunisian companies like Plasteel in recent years.
We've been investing in a high-tech cutting machine to make metallic parts instead of buying them. We then use the mold to be cut for a manufacturing process called plastic molding. We did this in response to our clients around the world who demand the highest production standards. And this was our biggest development for 2020, but unfortunately the COVID-19 pandemic prevented us from reaching our yearly financial objectives.
Tunisia's 5-month industry lockdown cost this Plasteel factory around $1.9 million. This unit's 200 workers also saw their salaries cut by 20%. Just 10 employees remained on site during lockdown to complete outstanding orders for a French car company. The industry will eventually improve, says the National Union Chamber of Plastic Processors Manufacturers, but not immediately.
Our real concerns now, with detections of more and more cases in Tunisia, are outbreaks in some industrial units. Despite us doing our best to raise awareness with manufacturers regarding health and protection measures, as we did here, a recovery is on the way, but concerns and poor visibility overshadow the coming months.
The outlook is still unclear for many of Tunisia's industrial manufacturers, and the country's unemployment rose to 18% in the second quarter. Many are now hoping that the government and the central bank will do more to support businesses in the months ahead, which will in time perhaps allow Tunisia to fulfill its dream of becoming a world-class plastics hub for North Africa.
Well, that marks another show to have rolled off the production line. We hope you enjoyed it. Do be sure to follow us on social media. Speaking of which, let me leave you with some Instagrammers making impact this week. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.
Emirati entrepreneur Abdullah and his team are masked and motivated whilst working at a local food brand. And Egyptian filmmaker and photographer Mohammed captured this portrait on his phone at a steel factory in Cairo.